Okay, so this is a video on some topics in Chapter 4, and the topics that we're going to be discussing are the categories of life, natural selection, types of symbioses, and succession. Alright, so first for the categories of life. So the three main ones are, the three main domains. Okay, so domains are above kingdom in terms of classification. So before you divide organisms up into kingdoms, they are in these three main domains. Okay, so you have bacteria. Shoot, let's see. Let's go to pointer options. Okay, so you have bacteria, archaea, and eukaryotes. Okay, so what's each one of these? So the bacteria and the archaea are actually both prokaryotes. Or essentially they're both bacteria. These bacteria here are your kind of everyday bacteria that live with us. So any bacteria in our environment, the E. coli, bacteria in your yogurt, these are kind of the everyday bacteria that we've known about for many decades. The archaea are extreme bacteria. And basically that means that they live in very extreme environments. And these have been more recently discovered in the past couple of decades. I never learned about these when I was in high school, and they keep learning more and more about them. So they live in very, very hot environments, the bottom of the ocean, places that have hardly any oxygen, very salty environments, very kind of toxic environments. And it's thought that these bacteria are perhaps the first types of life that were on Earth, because they were able to survive in such extreme environments. Okay, and then you have eukaryotes. So these, both the bacteria here and those again are prokaryotes. The archaea are prokaryotes. And then everything else that has a eukaryotic cell is in this domain. So if you remember, a prokaryote means it has no organelles. So no nucleus, no mitochondria, none of that stuff. It just has free-floating DNA in it. The eukaryotes have the type of cell that you probably think of. It has, the mitochondria, it has some vacuoles, it has the nucleus and endoplasmic reticulum, and all that stuff you've learned are eukaryotic cells. And you can see within here, you have the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, fungus, protists, and actually a lot of other kingdoms that keep being kind of classified, actually, that we don't really learn about. The ones that we learn about is this. And this is kind of what's standard kind of for biology and APES and most high school curriculum. You don't learn about all those other ones until you really specialize in taxonomy or biology or something. So basically you just need to know this. So you have the two domains of the bacteria, the two prokaryotic domains, archaea and bacteria. And then all the ones in green are the eukaryotes. So you should know the basic characteristics of the protist, plant, fungus, and the animal. And you can read this here. I'll post this PowerPoint on the web and our agenda, and it's also in your book. But basically prokaryotes are usually one-celled, and those are things like protozoa and amoebas. They can photosynthesize, some can eat. And then fungus, as you know, they're decomposers, they're multicellular, they don't photosynthesize. And then the plants have cell walls, they photosynthesize, they're multicellular, and then the animals, of course, are multicellular, but they have to eat their food. Okay, so you should be able to distinguish among those different kingdoms. Okay, so now on to natural selection, and a name that you're hopefully familiar with is Charles Darwin. And let's get the pointer on here. Okay, So he developed this theory of natural selection after his observations, actually not just on the Galapagos. Not so the Galapagos finches were very key in his discovery, but his theory developed over many, many years, and he traveled the world, looking at different animals, and actually used some of his knowledge about geology. Um, and so the question is, what is this theory about? And if we were in class, I'd ask you to somehow think think about what you know about it and somehow put it in your own words. And you might come up with something like survival of the fittest. That's a very great, succinct way of thinking about natural selection. And this idea that the fittest survive and then pass on their genes is kind of the crux of this theory. But there are a lot of ingredients that are needed in order to make that possible. And so, what we're going to do is kind of delve more specifically into the things that need to be present in a population for natural selection to actually help create new species. And that's the idea, that natural selection is creating new species. And his Darwin's example of finches right here is a great example, really, because his idea was that you started off with one type of finch, and through natural selection many types of finches developed, and they all eventually became their own species. Okay, so what are these ingredients that I'm talking about? I hope you enjoy that comic there. Okay, so there are four basic observations about the natural world that are needed in order for natural selection to work. The first one is that individuals need to over-reproduce. So basically, that each species produces more offspring that are going to survive. Okay, so you inherently get competition because of this. Okay, so there's this need for the fittest to survive because some are going to die. So the question is, who's going to die? Well, the weaker ones. So that's a key ingredient. The second is that you have limits to population growth. And this corresponds directly to what's in your book if you want to look at that for kind of more background. But populations can only grow a certain amount. And so once again, coupled with overproduction, you're going to get limited resources, and populations are going to reach kind of a maximum. Okay, another really important point is that individuals vary. So you can imagine if you had these two ingredients first, that there's going to be a limit on populations, that individuals are going to produce more than can survive, and if every single individual was the exact same, had the exact same genes, had the exact same length legs, had the exact same shaped beak, that it would just be by chance. Chance would determine who would survive, but that's not the case. It turns out that individuals do vary, so selection is not by chance, and the more fit individuals would therefore get a chance to beat out the weaker individuals. Okay. The last idea is this, and their book talks about differential reproductive success. And essentially, this has to assume that you have heredity. So if an organism, let's say you have a giraffe that has a longer neck and is able to reach leaves better, okay, so it's going to survive. The only way that that can actually work for the entire species as a whole is if it's able to pass on those genes to its offspring, and therefore its children will have also a longer neck because that trait was passed on by genes. Okay, if that wasn't true, then that one giraffe that has a long neck would survive, and then, well, good for it, but nobody else. So this reproductive success, in terms of if you're a survivor, if you win, you get to pass that on, and then the chances of your children winning are therefore much better.